in my opinion. We are a very important part, often overlooked in certain circles, but I do believe over the last 18 months we are improving our profile and exposure to regulatory authorities around the Great Barrier Reef and the Burdekin River Catchment Authorities. No disrespect to NQ Dry Tropics, they've always included our predecessor council in the east and ourselves at Barcaldine Regional Council in their communiques, but we certainly are a very important contributor to a number of ecological and environmental concerns, notwithstanding economic for the Upper Valley Endo, one of the more significant area of tributaries, not necessarily water, but certainly covers a very large portion of a challenging environment within the Burdekin catchment. So this document is a strategic approach. I just asked the CEO prior to, after we went to morning tea, about our prior involvement in the RPMG, which is the strategic group that is referred to on page 8 of your document. We're certainly listed as that. As the CEO, on behalf of all of you, to make sure that we have a very active officer level presence on that, because there's the potential for future funding opportunities and the ability to participate in programs that, if we have an active officer level participation, they're aware of that. So I'm happy to move that as I have. Councillor Peebles the second. Any further conversation? Being none, all in favour? 7-0. Council authorises the Local Government Sustainability Framework. I alluded to this earlier, councillors, that Barcaldine with Samad and Brett are forming part of that working group to review this methodology. I think it's important, as does the CEO, that we authorise the CEO to provide feedback to the department on this paper that may be independent of RAPID's approach, as we have previously on other state government, just where there may be some point of differences between Barcaldine Regional Council's approach and RAPID's. Noting your advice and feedback on a previous submission relating to FAGs, any of that feedback will certainly be brought to council before it's submitted. This is just at least authorising the CEO to begin preparing work that may, if we find through our work with RAPID that there's a divergence of views and we're very keen on a particular point being made that may not be or may get lost within a broader submission, that Barcaldine Regional Council will do a direct approach. Councillor Peebles moves, seconded Councillor Arthur. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a point to the CEO who will be doing this work that I think that we will need to make a submission, because I think the broader approach is probably different to ours. And I go back to, I think there's got to be some way that we start looking at sustainability, and when you've got councils like our own that has to provide and then maintain facilities for 5 communities.
Replicated
Facilities,
yep.
Compared to councils that have one town. And the burden on councils like ours compared to councils that only have one town, is far greater, and I think it's a very important point that we've got to start making to state and federal government.
Councillor Peebles, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I, in fact, totally endorse that. We've received this relatively soon to this meeting, so there's been a significant amount of work getting this meeting document together. There's a number of these ratios that we need to run our figures through to see where that lines us up. Obviously, some of that will be done through the working group, but we certainly need to just have a look at what this is. Now, there's been a number of stakeholders reach out, Brett, to you. You want to go through them?
Yeah, so certainly LGAQ has contacted me, and they will be putting in a submission as well. RAPID putting in a submission, and they've engaged consultant to prepare that submission, and that's the one that the Mayor mentioned about. We are on that, we've been nominated to be on that working group. So really, we could be part of 3 submissions: our own, Rapid, and LGOQ.
So when you go to that,
Or if you can put whack in there as well, it could be 4.
when you go to that breakup of the towns, you know, you're very large towns, or very small. You look at very small where we fall. You can go through there and you can probably, I don't know, there might be about 20 communities in there, but there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, probably about 10 that have one community. The rest of us have 3 to 5. So I don't think they belong in the same area.
Yeah, Councillor, I take your feedback and not meaning to gloss over it. I intend when we get our head around exactly where we fall to call council together for a planning strategy around our response to this. It is extremely premature to ask the CEO because we've been really busy in a number of areas.
I'm
not ready for a debate on it yet, to be fair.
I'm just making some points for the CEO to consider, that's all.
Agreed, totally. Not any disagreement. We need to, it's such a complex area. What we need to be able to do is bring along a big spreadsheet with these new formulas put up there, and we sit here and pick it apart and we go through this document literally page by page. That's my intent for council. Certainly not taking away the need to further contribute to this discussion. I guess it's just we're receiving the formula, the document, and authorising that we are going to do it. One of the more critically important submissions to government that this council will develop over its lifetime is this one.
I agree.
Yeah, I think this is more important than a FAGS methodology review, given that I think the politics of FAGS will mean that there'll only be argy-bargy around a few minor things. I genuinely don't expect real reform of FAGS. I think it's going to be out of where it is now. This, however, has seriously important, far-reaching ramifications for the future of local government, especially local governments of our size. So, yeah, unfortunately our timeline's not great on it. We haven't got a substantial period of time. It will become the considered focus of the senior executive and myself over the next few days, week, and then we'll bring back to you some scenarios and sentiments, because we may have to be very strong in our language, in our submission, which obviously we will require council's support for.
So when do we come back to have a look at it?
I can't give you a time, sorry, I don't know, because we haven't diaried ourselves when we can set aside with.
We're meeting on the afternoon, though, we're going
We have 4 all day. So what we might do is look to bring councillors, the 8th could be a big day for you. We're at Narberthong Road, Kyneton, from 9 till 10. That'll probably realistically be, we might look to try and arrive a little earlier, 8:30, catch up with some people then for our rural community and forum. Whenever we come back to town, not simply 1 o'clock, we may commence our corporate risk cost of services, and I may ask, following the community engagement forum, if there's anything further that we haven't discussed about this, or the next day at the council meeting, we may need to extend into the evening to finish our review of this. I absolutely detest asking officers and councillors to work at night. It is, you would think it a method of absolute last resort, because very seldom after 5 o'clock is a decision made. But given the strategic importance of this and the very congested diaries we have regarding community consultation over the next few weeks, that may be one of the few exceptions to that rule that I do. We may need to meet in the evening, either Monday or Tuesday, to finalise our position on this. Apologies in advance, but just make sure that you have no engagements on either the 8th or the 9th after our formal council engagements are finished. Because we'll need every bit of that time between now and then to get it together.
Can we just organise some accommodation, Mr Mayor?
We'll do that out of session. We'll do some diary work at the end of this meeting. there's a bunch of stuff that we're going to need to do there. That's best if we're all in the room with Debbie together to organise. So there we go. 337.
Just need a vote for that one, please.
I haven't voted. I'm sorry, Debbie. Those in favour? Against, 7-0. Portable and attractive items policy. Very unique name, but I think only an auditor would come up with. Is that correct? Sorry?
Yes.
There you go. Mark one for me. Who's leading the discussion? It looks to speak for itself, but
Mr Mayor, it's a policy that the auditors have requested that you have, so basically it's we only capitalise items to the value of over $5,000. Over $5,000 goes into the asset register. If it's under $5,000 expensed. Means we don't really have a record. That's assets that we purchase under 5,000.
power tools, computers.
Things that can easily be stolen, basically. So that's what this policy is about, to make sure that we do keep a register of those items. So we check that on an annual basis.
Councillors, I see this as a little bit of work, but I see it as important to signal to current and future staff that we value every single piece of equipment or item that we own or buy as important to our organisation, and that there will be a methodology attached to tracking that. Reconciling this every year will be an absolute nightmare. I don't envy the assets manager their job, because that improves our work practices and accountability of individual staff or tools supposedly in their control, then I guess that's a positive outcome. So, Councillor Beckles, were you questioning this?
No, Mr Mayor, I was moving the motion.
I'll accept your move. Seconded by Councillor Gleeson. Comment.
Mr Mayor, just point one, the scope, there's 4 items there. So an item, if it is any of those or all of those? It just says that they have the following characteristics. So does an item have to fulfil all of those characteristics or just one?
If you're asking me, I would read it, and you're correct in saying the grammar doesn't declare it, but I would expect that it would be if it fits any one of those 4 criteria. Can we have a grammar expert please suggest some additional words there that make sure that the intent of it is clear, that it is...
It's not all 4 characteristics, make it.
Just the word any, have any of the following characteristics.
Councillors, is that...
Because, through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding is the intention of the policy is to capture those things under $5,000. But we may have something that's worth $10, but we have 100 of them, or we might have something that's worth $4,999, we only have 3 or 4 of them. And as long as they're easily lost or stolen or broken, then...
Something that would be interesting here is a set of portable panels, because when they would have been bought, they would have been bought, say, as a portable panel yard for $8,000 or for whatever, but each panel is only worth between $90 and $120. Well, probably be $120 and $150 these days. So that would be interesting how they capitalise or don't capitalise that, or whether whether it's one item or whether each panel is an individual item. I mean, that's being pedantic, but that's they're things that easily walk.
Because all but a few organisations or businesses I've worked for have got policy for small and attractive items, whether that's locally or internationally, because they know the more staff you employ, the more of these items that you have, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff that you don't know you've got, basically.
Councillor, I'm a very small business, but as my son turns from 15 to 16 and builds his own toolkit, I'm going to have to introduce this exact same policy in my family. So Councillor Peoples, there has been an amendment suggested to your policy, and that is to insert the word any between have, two words between have and the.
I'm fine with that, Mr Mayor.
Are you agreed to accept? Councillor, is there
Sorry,
further?
I just had one other point. Point 2, procedure, the last dot point, any other items so clarified from time to time by the Chief Executive. Do we want to have an appendix to that policy so that those so classified items can be added to it without changing the body of the policy? Or how do we manage those additional items that may be added?
How
from
do
time
they
to time?
added? So is there a document that we can have that the CEO just amends and adds to by declaration?
As opposed to coming back potentially to add things and then come back to the council, Mr Mayor.
Well, really, but if there's, really, it's up to the CEO to, if something comes up that doesn't fit in those categories, it's up to the CEO to decide whether it's.
We agree
to that.
Yeah, we agree, but where do you capture that so that it's written? Because here now every staff member picks this up and they knows that that's what's captured. You issue a determination. Where does your future determination sit so that they're read in conjunction with this policy?
So we're
For,
just,
for example, oh, sorry, Councillor Cox.
for example, that sheepyard kennels or
And where does a future staff member pick this up and say, well, there's those things and these things as determined by the CEO? Is there a possibility to have a directions appendix? Where future directions by the CEO are listed? Which will help your auditor as well.
Well, we can add it into the actual register, to the heading of the register. Register, and then including cameras, computers, and something else that I added into that heading.
So the definitions within the register itself. So that dot point could be amended that any other items so classified from time to time by the Chief Executive Officer and which are then listed in the definitions contained within the actual register. Very wordy, but is that?
That's it, yeah.
I think you raise an interesting point there, not only from tracking, but the auditors will then clearly see the CEO's made a determination, and it's not just an email to staff, there's an amendment to the policy, which we do, or there's a direction from the CEO which is captured within the register, and we've now provided the mechanism in the policy to do that, so that's very good.
And Mr Mayor, that then creates a direct input into the process.
Yes. Without necessarily having to come back here.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, People and Lisa, are you happy with both of those amendments? So any of and the direction to include in the definitions?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
You want them listed here as part of the resolution or just as
No.
per?
I'm happy with the verbal conversation on this, and they're immaterial amendments. They're not something that substantially changes the policy document. Councillor Rogers, have you got anything to add? Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, before we go to a vote, the question I want to ask is the store persons in the depots, haven't they got everything documented that's in that depot? Isn't everything documented there today? Shouldn't they know that there's 15 portable panels over there, and then after the campcraft use them this weekend, they go back and count them, and then there's only 14? Shouldn't that be documented?
Suggest that. That's why we're putting this policy in place.
And it's not just the depots. The whole organisation, officers.
What's
So
sitting
there's
right?
assets.
Yeah.
Councillors have got computers, so they're entered into the register as well.
So every 12 months, the assets manager is going to come around and scan a barcode. Like federal and state government assets, like mobile phones, for example, get a little barcode on the back of it. And I don't know the procedure we'll use and I don't care, but it might be a simple numbering system because we're not that big, although we are probably big enough. I reckon we'll have more of these than we've got, bigger than this, to be fair. But what the inventory control is slightly different to asset tracking. Stores have probably, up until this point, Brett, would it be fair to say that the focus for the stores officers has been on inventory of things like steel posts and hand cleaner and personal protective equipment and things that sit there that are then assigned, so they come to the stores officer and we need 100 stakes to go out on a job, so they get 100 stakes out. So they know at any one point in time what's sitting in their inventory, but once it's removed, it's then costed to a job or listed to a responsible area, and so therefore it's out of stores control, and the assets have previously not sat within stores control. So, for example, they may be asked to procure on behalf of the carpenter an electric drill, but once it arrives and it's then issued, it falls out. Stores no longer have visibility of the electric drill because it's in a tool. That's a simplistic way of describing it, Brett, but would that be fair?
Yes. And so each group of assets will have an asset owner. They're responsible for the assets and they list. Maybe the office manager responsible for everything in their office. So the depots, so the senior work supervisor, but the depot officer might be actually doing the work for them. Someone is the asset owner and they're responsible.
Personal protective equipment and clothing would not be captured by this policy, though, would it? That's issued to the... Okay. Any further questions? I was going around the room. Councillor Plum?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Is that the only question, Councillor Gladstone? Thank you. Councillor Peoples? Those in favour? 7-0. Rural Roads Register. As per substantial workshopping to the owners, any further changes from my note comparison?
Mr. Mayor, this is, I suppose, a summarised version of the very detailed asset register that we have developed. But under the Act, we're required to have a register of roads, sorted into categories and also according to the surface of the road. This is I suppose, a summarised version. We'll also get a map of the whole area with all these roads.
And that will all straight behind Summit. Great. Big one. So the Councillor Peoples can use his pointer and show us.
Happy to do so, Mr. Mayor.
I bet you are. Councillors, one thing that has been raised by officers previously with me and my predecessor is that as the issues change or the surface changes in the right-hand columns, so that sealed gravel components, so we may elect as a council to seal 2 or 3 kilometres of road, or we may elect to sheet a kilometre or 2 of road. That actually means that you have to go back and change your roads register. I actually don't have a problem with that. Like, we could try and find a mechanism very similar to what we did for the previous resolution. We don't do that often, to be fair, and we budget to do that. It's obviously a decision of council. So we should be referring to this register, and at the point that we then complete those works, we'll update the register with precisely what changed as opposed to what we estimated to change at the point we did the budget. I think is an appropriate trigger to review that register annually, or biannually if we don't, for 1 year we don't do any, but we're always tinkering with something in that. So I'm comfortable with the need to as we change those things, it's not like we've got 65,000 kilometres of roads and that's a constantly changing situation. We've got a very big network. We've got 2,094 plus kilometres of roads, but we're only really changing the running surface consistency on a, I won't say ad hoc basis, but very limited basis. So, do I have any more questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Plum. Councillor Rogers seconds. Debate? All those in favour? 7-0. Oh, Councillor People?
Yeah, no.
7-0. The Urban Roads Register. VRB, exactly the same thing. Urban Road Summary. 5 kilometres of streets or roads located within urban declared areas of 77.1 kilometres. Gives us just over 2,100, a bit over nearly 2,200 kilometres of road network to administer, not counting the state.
That was the form road.
Oh, sorry. Read the wrong column. You're correct, 2,750. Sorry, we're close to 3,000 kilometres of road. Plus DMR assets. Do I have a mover to accept the Urban Road Register, please? Councillor Rogers, second Councillor Haynes. Comment?
The urban register is done from block to block, which is why all the roads are repeated.
Section 74 of the Act is a very onerous section. If you know section 74.c, must prepare and keep up to date a map of every road, including private roads. That's a very onerous expectation on council. You know, our awareness of the existence of those roads is quite limited. I don't Google Earth to know where they all are, but we need not know. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking about Google Earth and some of their road mapping and directional finding.
Those in favour of this, please. Councillor People. Oh, sorry. All in favour? Go. 3310. Councillors, there has been some movement at the station before the word has passed around. Rockhampton Regional Council has formally resolved to join the group, and Waikatembo Regional Council has formally resolved to leave the group. So there has been a net no change in contributors. In terms of the overall strategic import, it's probably been a net gain by that movement. Rockhampton's a end source. They add substantial lobbying power to the group. So in those two cases, they probably, them joining outweighs whatever negativity may have been associated with Waikatembo leaving. Waikatembo has, they were the smallest contributor by beef through that group anyway. Clearly this approach is not in their self-determined strategic interests. However, the other local governments have reaffirmed, including Isaacs, Gladstone, Nana, Warrabinda, Central Highlands, Rockhampton and now ourselves. Hopefully ourselves. The initial cost was to launch the concept to do the preliminary mapping and event management. This is a program management for a 12-month contract. It's all spelled out, I think, in that document. There has been substantial federal government attraction to this. The two spokesperson mayors for the group, of which I'm one, have been contacted by very senior federal government ministers requesting more detailed contribution from us around the priority roads that have been identified by that group. A concept that we're still trying to identify with them is that every road is a priority. We actually haven't outranked one over the other. However, we certainly clearly showed them that the roads that Buckhorn Regional Council have contributed to that are the 1 and 2 order priority roads for the Outback Regional Road Group. So our planning and contribution to that is resourced and reinforced by our state strategic mapping work. So we've got very substantial supporting evidence for our position on that. The other local governments don't all necessarily participate in have the ability to participate in a regional road group with the same rigour and alignment of priorities that we are fortunate to have here in the Central West. This is for, as it says there, project management to really reinforce as we go into a federal election cycle and look to, because the federal government will contribute, as is on recurrent, it's been about 80% of any of these upgrades that are required, so they are the main focus of the lobbying effort here. And that's effectively what it is, but it's also to assist those local governments to coordinate internally how we will deliver these upgrades and what time frame is considered acceptable. There's at the moment a slight variety of opinion amongst the mayors as to the time frame that we think is acceptable, but it's not significant. We just need to land on an exact time frame. For the benefit of councils present, my intent is 6 years as the outside, but we see every one of the roads that are listed here as unsealed, sealed. That keeps it within, if you're wondering why I picked 6 years, some have suggested slightly longer. For me, 6 years keeps it within the forward estimates for the incoming federal government. If you get it outside 6 years, they can contribute something over, say, 8 to 10 years, but they actually don't have to commit any money to that. It can be an aspirational target, whereas if you keep it within that 6 years, we keep it in the forward estimates, which are 4-year cycles. We all sort of know that the money's going to drop off towards 8 to 10 years. We could be seeing some really difficult economic times in terms of government spend. I think in the forward estimates, we're probably not likely to see government spend drop off. So we need to keep this project, in my opinion, if we want to see these unsealed corridors sealed, then the time to strike is now. I don't want to type any more of your meeting time. I'm happy to take any questions about what this may deliver. The other thing I should note is that the unsealed corridors that are part of this from now, there's some sealed corridors that we've identified as well, including the Capricorn Highway and Aramac Torrens Creek, but the unsealed corridors that form the crux of the Beef Corridors project are Alpha Tembo and Alpha Clement. So that's what our outtake of this is, hopefully to upgrade major feeders into the Capricorn Arterial and then the northern and southern linkages via the Landsborough and Aramac Torrens Creek. Decisions in your hands, questions if you wish first.
Mr. B, is it Tambo Shire pulled out and where the organisation is pushing to do a bit of Tambo Shire Road?
Not really, most of theirs is sealed. They've got very limited unsealed sections remaining. The predominant section of the Alpha Tambo Road that's unsealed falls within Blackall Tambo strategic approach. They support via Outback Regional Roads, that being that's the number one priority in the whole of the Central West is that highway. But Blackall Tambo's took a very strong focus on Tambo Springshaw as an upgrade road for them, which I've supported through the roads group as well. I think it's probably the third. I think it's number 3. 1 and 2 are, I may have the orders wrong, but 1 and 2 are definitely Blackall Tambo Alpha and Alpha Clermont. I'm not sure in which order. And then Tambo Springshaw's 3. I definitely understand the local strategic demand for Tambo to see that road, Blackall Tambo to see that sealed. Thinking slightly more broadly, it's only 20 kilometres from the exact point of the intersection of Tambo Springshaw and Tambo Alpha. It's only 20 kilometres further to drive via Alpha to Emerald than it is via Springshaw to Emerald if you're heading to Rockhampton, and that's where the big networks are. So the significant cost to upgrade Tambo Springshaw when they've already got a very well-established highway, dominantly all sealed, makes it difficult for me to understand the strategic background to Sealy for the big picture. But from the position of the BTRC, certainly if I was in their shoes, I'd be furthering the exact argument they are. It's a substantial PMR asset in their patch that's very difficult to maintain, dangerous in times, very inhospitable terrain. The road goes through. Sealed would be a way better condition than unsealed. So I'm ambivalent to that. The Blackwell Tembo being sealed makes a major difference. Tembo Alpha being sealed makes a major difference to network maintenance for TMR and through traffic getting to what this project is about, and that's movement of beef. And there's a lot of cattle out of there heading to live export. The Tembo Springsure makes no difference to them. They have to come north. The other thing is Tembo Alpha is a continuation of the Type 2 road train network. Tembo Springsure is a termination of a Type 2 road train network halfway along that route. Good question. Is there anyone against contributing this? Brett, budget?
Regional affiliation. Capacity.
I'll move, Mr Chair.
Councillor Beckles moves. Do I have a seconder? Formal debate in favour of or against? Sorry, Councillor Hanson. Seconds. Those in favour? 7-0.
Mr Mayor, can I just ask another point away from this, but with regards to roads? Can I, probably all councillors, can we get a copy of the Outback Road Group priority list, please?
Yeah, we expect that document anyway. We haven't got it yet either. We workshopped it in Longridge at our last rapid board meeting, and the Secretariat for the Regional Roads Group was to go away and undertake some work around mapping, and we would probably expect it at our next meeting in November. So yes, as soon as we get it, we'll circulate.
Thank you.
I can give you some feedback on that. This is not the overall prioritisation commentary. This is just the hierarchy that roads are viewed within. So you can be a hierarchy of road but have a higher priority than your number, if that makes sense. The hierarchy just determines its fit as a style of road. So Jericho Aramac Road has increased to a hierarchy 4. Bowen Downs Road has decreased to a hierarchy 5. Ilfracombe Aramac.
Mr Mayor, is 4... Which way are we going here? 1 to 4, or which
1 being the highest.
1 being the highest, thank you.
Ilfracombe Aramac Road was not suitable for a category upgrade.
And what category is it?
No, I'm referring to my notes from the day, sorry. I don't know, I can't say. I'd be guessing and I don't want to misinform the meeting. There's no RRTG funding, which is the Regional Road Group's funding for Hierarchy 1 roads, hence there's no investment priority. So that's why I mean these hierarchies are a statement of intent for local governments and the state across the board for specialist R2R funding or something that we have the discretion, like TIMS funding, discretionary TIMS for example. It doesn't fit within where the state allocate roads, which is why Bowen Downs went down, because it's a local government controlled road, not a state asset such as Ilfracombe Aramac, which was why it was not suitable, because they determine the hierarchy for their own roads. Blackwell Jericho decreased as an investment priority.
Mr Mayor, you've just lost me there a bit. They determine the hierarchy for their own
We
roads.
provide advice. Yep.
Yeah, but you provide advice like the Alpha
Correct.
Clermont Road, you can prioritise that so as they get the picture that you want that road done.
Your difference from priority, we actually do vote on the priorities.
Yep.
The hierarchies bit of a bureaucracy thing. There's hierarchies and then there's investment priorities, and the two documents don't reflect each other necessarily. We all vote and support where the investment priorities are. The hierarchies are just like we have level 1, 2, 3, 4 roads, but we may choose to upgrade a level 3 road over a level 1 road because of some ever reason. So the investment priority is the key thing. Creamsy Muttaburra decreased as an investment priority from a 1 to a 2, just like Wackle Jericho decreased from a 1 to a 2, purely on the basis that those roads are now both sealed, and the investment priority for Regional Roads Group has always been to have sealed roads connecting towns before we go to upgrades. Which is why Aramac Torrens Creek, so the 3 that decreased were Creamsy Muttaburra, Barkey Aramac Torrens Creek, and Wackle Jericho, all decreased from 1s to 2 on the basis that they were sealed. Muttaburra Aramac increased to the same level, it increased to a 2. It was lower than that. So that was the major strategic movements that affected our region. I said that. Sorry, I said those ones first, yeah. So investment priorities are the key. That's the key to watch for. And the Regional Roads Group now only has 3 roads left unsealed. So the next, like, it sounds bad that Creamsy Muttaburra and Barkey Aramac Torrens Creek is decreased, but there's still the next layer above everything else. The only other ones above them are those that are not sealed. So as soon as they're sealed, they will decrease, and then the battle becomes driven almost purely by average daily vehicle traffic, and that then throws Barkey Aramac to the top. It's the highest average daily passenger vehicle road in the entire Central West TMR district. So we'll see that come out. That'll be reflected in their mapping and strategic statements. When we get that, there'll be a nice glossy publication coming out of the Secretariat for the Regional Roads Group, and we'll circulate that amongst all council. Annual Operational Plan Review. Can I have somebody move that we receive the report and then discuss? Councillor Plum, Councillor Gleeson. All in favour? 7-0. Comments, councillors? Officers?
Mr. Mayor, the only item that I haven't included is at the bottom of each section is the financial commitment. The budget's there. I haven't actually put in the actual spend for the quarter. It's waiting on our software to be rolled over to the new chart of accounts, so do that easily.
You can't roll that over until the auditor gives you the okay, is that right?
No, this is a software issue.
No, okay.
But it would be better to have the audit done first before we do it, yes.
Just opening up the old one's challenging.
Yes.
Right. No more questions?
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor, do we have a time frame on our asset management plans? 5.3 contemporary asset management plans developed for class.
Mr. Mayor, we have an asset management steering committee. which is working through those. So the first one is our transport asset management plan. We have a draft of that, so I would expect that by the December meeting, we'll have it presented to council. And once that's completed, we'll move towards the other ones, or the other plans, and that the intention would be that they're all done by the 30th of June. Transport, which is roads and airports, is the biggest, most difficult.
Okay.
Thank you.
3312. Somebody moved that we received the correspondence advising us that we were unsuccessful in the Building Better Regions Federal Government Infrastructure Fund Stream Round 5. Councillor Peters moves. Seconder. Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Carried. We probably should defer any further commentary about this until the CEO can report what the feedback is. Okay. Your blessing, councillors, I'll move to 341. Can I have somebody please move that we receive the financial report? Councillor Gleeson, seconded Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Councillor Pickles is in favour, 7-0. Thank you. Okay, I've just got questions lining up our cash. So I see we have receivables of 2.1 million in that order, is that right?
2.4 million.
I beg your pardon?
2.4 million in rates, I think.
That's right, yet in our balance sheet, under current assets receivable for the end of September is 2.1. Is it because the rates weren't issued at that point? Is that double our receivables?
It should include the rates.
That's right, it should, but yet the rates outstanding are what we've got on page 181, rates of 2,442,000 is a bigger figure than receivables on page 176 of 2,144,000. It's 300,000 difference. And I'm sure that we would have other receivables other than rates.
They're all step in at this point and rescue some, man.
By the way,
Mr Mayor, I believe that the reason for that is the accruals from last year haven't been reversed. That there's been accrued revenue. So why that figure is less than.
so that figure, accrued revenue from the 1920 year needs to be taken out of the, the 2021 year needs to be taken out. What figure would that be?
2.5 million.
So that increases the value of receivables by 2.5 million. So that would change our receivables figure to approximately 4.6, which would include rate revenue of outstanding rates of 2,442,000 and other receivables. Doesn't change cash though. So the cash calculation that shows our sustainability, that doesn't get changed because receivable is not cash sitting there to be coming in. So the cash figure is still the cash figure. I was just trying to line up our assets, current assets, when the outstanding rates were still that high, I thought we'd have to have debtors on top of that, and yet our receivables was relatively small.
As of today, there's 1.1 million in other receivables other than rates. Got rates of 2.1 million and accounts receivable 1.1.
Okay, so that doesn't get to 4.6, gets to 3.6.
That's done at the 30th of September.
Okay.
Those figures,
Right.
this is as of today.
Right, and so the cash figure's different today, of course, too. Okay, and the other thing I note, given my fixation in recent meetings, is the number of 1 and 2 year rates is continuing to decline. Approximately another 20 assessment down, year 1, and probably another 5 or 6 that are 2 years down, so that's good. That's on page 181, councillors, in the order of a considerable deduction of the number of assessments. We expect, of course, years 4 and up, 3, 4 and 5 really to be static. Obviously an intent not to pay, or they're the fake ones out of the community. Yeah, sardine. So that just continues to monitor that. And the other thing is, councillors, I'll point out, in case you didn't notice, that in advance rates are clearly only paid for one rate period in advance, because that figure is just about gobbled clean up. The minute someone hit issue on the rates, we went from having approximately 300,000 in rates in advance to now only 65. So people were just paying that one rate notice towards the end of the financial year as a prepaid rates, is what that is. So and I'd imagine, Jenny, that figure would fluctuate all the time.
But, I mean, generally it's people paying out of their pay, so like a fortnightly contribution. Like that occurs. You're just paying a bit extra.
And to you, Mr Mayor, there are a lot of big members of the community that are being paying on a fortnightly, monthly basis as well, so it's really ramped up to do that.
So the lowest that figure ever is would be in the month that the rates are issued, because then for next month that figure will have grown by those weekly, fortnightly, monthly contributions, and it'll just build and build and build until we issue the next rate notice and swipe the credit card again. It would appear, councillors, that the 18-19 flood damage has all been, the payment in advance has all been expended. They're now starting to eat into. So good and bad, it wipes that fake cash out of our system, but obviously it also now puts us in a cash in arrears position. So as either we do the work or the contractors are paid, we then have to wait for the claim for the money to come in. Okay, so it's good in that it does certainly tidy our balance sheet up, gets rid of that cash in advance. However, we now go to cash neutral territory, or cash in arrears territory, where we're waiting. We might be paying contractors $1 million for a package of work, and then we'll be in deficit for that million until we handle the receipt from rate. The lead time on that can be how long? Months, yeah. So
If you put in a claim, they may ask for copies of invoice, details, payroll details, plan details. And then they also send officers out to check the roads on a random basis.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that finalisation, is it done on the flood event, or do we do it by areas or roads that we've done, but that's dependent on us? Or,
Yeah. So it's progress claims.
Yeah.
why I make that point, councillors, is if you note the 18-19 event, there's still a further $10.5 million worth of work to be done, like on the value of the grant. So that's potentially at different times $10 million we're going to have to find. It's not there now.
Along those lines, Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question on page 174? When we look at our month to month, our operating profit or loss, and then our year to date, those two minus figures there, brackets, of the 1279 to 3250. So that's year to date, that's 3250, isn't it?
Correct.
So that doesn't look good. We're halfway through the year and we're -3. So we've got some
And we're only a
claims.
quarter of the way. This is
Well,
September.
well, sorry, we're
3 months.
Yeah. So we've got some outstanding claims that will round that up a bit for us, or where are we at there?
Well, that was the point I just raised before about the receivables. So
Is there some money still outstanding that will make that look a bit healthier?
2.5 million in rates, 2,442,000.
I'm talking about any outstanding from roads or,
But with respect, that is in there. Your operating profit or loss includes your rates.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's more to do with the recoverable works income. So we have put in claims as of last month with QRA, and it's all to do with that TMR works and all those claims, so that it could be just the timing of the claims.
That's it. I think there's only 400,000 outstanding TMR. Is that correct, Jenny? Well, sorry, I don't know what figure's outstanding. There's only 400,000 actually invoiced to TMR. There could be more ready to go.
you think there's more something?
And there's, well, not with TMR, but with QRA maps.
How much?
I'm not sure what the exact claim we put in, but
So listed there is recoverable works income of 2,339,000. Is that what you're referring to?
sorry, Mr. Mayor.
So in the operating revenue, there's recoverable works year to date of 2,339,000. That would include those claims that are ready to go to QRA, wouldn't it?
No, because we don't recognise them, because until they actually tell us how much they're going to pay us, we don't recognise it. The revenue, same as main roads, you put in a claim, you wait for them to assess it, then they tell us how much to invoice.
Right.
So I'm trying to ascertain if we've got some outstanding claims and where we have.
Obviously, from that, yes, we
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
So, but we need to find out what they are.
So on our budget, we're down about 1.3 million. Is it because we haven't done the work or we just haven't got the advice back from those agencies to invoice them? Well, recoverable works income, we're 1.3 down from what we budgeted. Is that because the work hasn't been done or because we haven't received departmental or QRA advice on the invoice amount? Because the invoice, obviously 2339 reflects the works that we've invoiced.
So in October, so this is done at the end of September, we have invoiced for over $1 million, just over $1 million. 13 months.
That eats that up straight away. So a point here to point out, because it's probably relevant, materials, one of the big contributors, or the biggest contributor to our operating loss is the double expenditure on materials and services actual to budget. $4 million more. That in itself directly picks up where we thought we'd be if you add that 4 million back in. So if we procured materials ahead of our ability to recover. Is that possible? That's a massive $8 million, $8.5 million worth of materials and services. That said, we also haven't applied depreciation either. Depreciation is not entered there, and there's, assuming it's just a monthly thing, but there's 1.9 budgeted in depreciation, so which is roughly equal to what we have to recover in works. Okay. We'll have a look at that, councillors, and see where the materials and services, with a massive September alone, accounts for the difference between budget and actual. More than alone, 4.8 million in 1 month. Maybe we had to pay for something big. Further questions, councillors?
On our statement of cash flow, our full year is saying $10 million.
Increase.
Yeah. You guys agree with that?
That increase in cash. Very bottom line.
Hope you're right.
I think you'll find councillor have not yet received the advance payment for the 2020 flood damage event because the claim hasn't been lodged. When it comes in, there's your increase. That was an estimate based on the estimated value of works. Correct.
The heading is incorrect, that's cash at the end.
Actually, a decrease.
It's 10 million. That's the budget figure.
Which one?
The net increase, decrease in cash total, which is the third bottom. Change in cash.
8,150,000 back. Right, and
That's in the budget.
yeah, so you're changing 18,260 at the beginning.
And the 10 million is the balance at the end.
So that's minus the 8150, so the heading's not quite accurate. So that bottom heading should read cash on hand at end of reporting period.
These are the statements that QTC send us. So, one of the issues.
They probably look all right and everything too, but I'm struggling a bit to understand and believe some of them. I don't know about you guys, Brett, but then you go to your graphs, when you get down the back here a little bit, on page 179. What do I see here? On materials and services, our budget in the blue is 4.6 million, and the graph in green, we spent 5.9. That's gone through the.
That's the point I just pointed out. That's on the front page as well. We bought a lot more than we budgeted to spend year to date.
Gone through the top of the blue, yeah.
Yeah.
So just on, some ads design these different style of graphs.
Yep.
Does that make it easier to read with the blue and the green? So the blue being the budget, the green showing how much we've spent.
I like that. That's, I don't mind a picture, it tells me a fair bit. But the other thing we did ask for a while back was just a little bit of a brief note, a brief on sort of our cash, where we're at, what we've got in the bank, how we see the end of the year. We actually had a couple of meetings ago.
That's on 177.
I missed it.
sustainability graph, Mr Mayor.
Above it is the cash at bank today, then exclude the flood damage and our loan from that, and then exclude the annual leave and long service leave. So our total actual cash that's not committed is 4,314,605. That's what's actually there that we can use for. The rest of it we can't touch. That's effectively 9 and a bit million that we can't. That's not ours to spend. That's if you went to that's your ATM receipt there. Well, if you look at the month-on-month sustainability, we went from July having 4 pay periods to August having 3 pay periods. Sorry, months, my apologies, double that. 8 pay periods to 6 to 2 months now. With 2 months cash buffer. If we stopped all revenue coming in tomorrow, we'd have 2 months of pay.
You know, I understand that there's done in figures and everything, but I just wanted a little story written by people or something, just saying. That's all right, I'll got all that.
Sorry, what do you want to the story to say, Councillor?
Well, just at the end of this month, we have so much in the bank, we still predict that we will have a balance at the end of the year, according to our budget of, predicted that we'll still finish the year with the 4 to 6 million or whatever we predicted. Just tell us a little bit of the story about how we're going, because you've got to go right through this. And, you've got to take out the employee benefits.
Well, you do, but it's actually taken out for you there.
Yeah, no, all right, Mr.
But maybe if you want more, we need to get, because I guess that was what I thought we wanted, was to know what our actual cash at bank is, not what is in there. But if we want to have how we're tracking, well, we can go further in that respect. Yeah, we'll look at doing more. The story can't get much worse, really, than what it is. It's only $4 million there uncommitted. Getting worse every month. The graph shows that very clearly.
Then you go to the graph on your capital works. And you've got 33 million there in blue and the green.
Well, we've been advised before that that's an impossible target to meet, but the reason the blue's there is because that's what QRA's assessment of our flood damage was, that has to be expended this financial year. So it's all got to go in there, but there's absolutely no physical way that the work's going to happen. So that's why it's there because we can't put it in any other year. It expires this year if the work's not done. But officers advised us 2 to 3 meetings ago and in our budget that there's just and fortunately, what we're doing the work under the value of work. So we might have an estimate to do a road at X amount, but when the contract's finished, we've done it for Y. So it's not necessarily that the work's not getting done, it's just that we're not going to see the value of money go out the door that QRA have estimated. And what's in that budgeted figure is different to what has now actually happened because there's been a double up in some areas of road that were impacted over 2 events.
Yep.
They've been costed separately, but when they're repaired once, they're repaired. So the value of work in the second or third event, well, the third event's not in the budget, the value of work in the second event is a duplication of the value of work in the first event. And that was QRA that did that, not us. We submitted it. Yeah, that's a glaringly big one that you could add all your TMR work into that as well and you're still not going to spend 35 million.
No. I was just wondering do we have what we think we might spend and have a blue and green? Yes. And the other one there that I saw with the graph was the flood damage expenditure on page 181, where our spent has gone through, and that's just money that we had to put in revenue.
That's what I was just referring to before.
Yes.
So that's the money in advance. So received 9 million in advance.
Yep.
So now we've spent that and we've gone past that. So now we've got to claim that extra.
So, but if there's 9 million there in flood damage and we've spent 9.8, how can we claim the?
It's approved. The approved amount is 26 million.
So that's, okay,
it's
yeah, no, I'm with
whatever
you.
the figure is. So yeah.
So we've done the work, but we've still got to claim that 700,000.
So everything
Okay.
from now on we have to claim.
That's what I was referring to. The key from now on is to try and keep that blue as close to the green, keep the claims going in as quick as we can, because we're spending our money now. It's approved to come back. Until it comes back, we're eating our cash to pay the contractor or conversely to pay our plant and staff operations.
I understand that now. I just know with the flood damage that we weren't getting, weren't getting it all back. I was wondering if that was money that we spent over and above what the flood damage allocation.
Then you've got the 1920 flood damage. We've still got 6 million sitting there that we haven't spent. Starting to spend that, so it's money that we do have in advance. Can't claim it against the 1819. It's very complicated, which is why that letter from QRA that's earlier in the tender is they're looking at changing the way they pay us.
The big problem is we don't want to be getting into the 1920 work either, to be fair, because we've got a very limited time frame to get the 1819 work finished. So that we don't lapse that money, we're going to have to keep concentrating on 1819 stuff. We've got another 12 months to do the 1920, but the 1819 stuff will, when it expires, it's gone. The opportunity to do it will be lost. So there's $20 million worth of work there, 20,907,000 under 1819, and we've only done 9,872,000. Admittedly, as I said before, we're doing a lot of these roads under what the reparation cost estimate was, so those two figures will never meet. Even if we had all the time in the world, they still won't meet. And it's that difference in the value that is what's put into the statewide betterment fund that we then, all councils that are affected by that particular event can apply for to upgrade a particular part of their asset to prevent future damage. So that's how the betterment fund is contrived. They allocate 20,900,000 to us, but we actually go and restore our assets for 18 million. 2 million gets siphoned off into the betterment fund. There's a pool of money there that all the councils that are affected by that particular event can apply to have money come back into their area to undertake betterment works.
So what's our timeline on that spend?
The flood damage.
Yeah.
There's some by 31st of December and 30th of June next year.
So how are we going to go, Vlad? Are we going to get a fair bit of that spent?
Most of the work's out in contractor. This next contract has two major contractors to around $2 million, so that will be a big hole now. And I'm hoping that yeah, we'll get there.
So at the November meeting, there'll be another big contracts
Yeah.
for council to approve. They'll be major.
Big work there to go, but isn't it? Big dollars.
Yeah.
It can be completed by the 31st of December.
Some. No. Which ones?
Ones that we're bringing into the November.
No.
That's for the June
For
deadline.
June.
Oh,
But there's ones that have already been issued that have to be done by December.
We'll have to really work hard to make sure that we try and get those done. Vlad?
Yes. Some of them that are we're responsible for, but most of them are contract. They're on their way.
The other thing I have done just in this, on page 178, our sum had to just give a bit of a cash flow over the last 10 years. So the top graph is, the green line is our revenue and the blue is our net cash flow, positive cash flow for each of those years, the operating cash flow.
So, yeah, but there's a difference there between what you just said. Net and operating are two different things.
Yeah, so that's operating revenue less operating expenses, doesn't include any capital. That's the net cash flow, which is probably the most important figure that we need to look at.
Is it? Because if you believe that graph, we'd be putting money away every year. But in fact, we've lost money year on year.
Because of the graph below.
That's right. But looking
So
purely
that's
at
our free money that we have available
Yep.
to choose to do after you pay all our operating expenses. That free cash where we choose to put into capital works. So
But we didn't have $25 million worth of free this year. Some of that's is appropriated as flood damage. That's not
So
free.
that's a budget, and it's probably
Mr. Mayor, left-hand side x-axis, the axis times your net operating cash flow.
Okay.
yeah. So it's
From
not
the
25.
5.5
The revenue, the right-hand side is the green line. Okay, sorry.
I was about to say, Brett, you cannot get me to believe that we had $25 million into capital, not
So-
shares. Yeah, fine.
As you can see, 19 was our low point. That's when we hit 2019. That was another good year.
Because we didn't have the money, but invested it anyway.
So the second graph is, blue is our net capital expenditure. So whatever money we had, that's what we're spending to our capital works.
This, on that second graph, I just noticed that, Mr. Mayor, the figure on the financial year 22, the yellow expenditure line should be over the green, which was 48.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So, Mr. Mayor, the expenditure on the, because we are anticipating a net capital loss this financial year. So as a result, that yellow line should be over the green. It was about 47 million.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of going down the yellow line, it's good to go up beside the green.
Yep.
Okay.
Would that be what you were referring to that you picked up?
I can't remember what it was. It didn't quite make sense to me at 5 o'clock this morning, Mr. Mayor.
So the blue bar represents the difference between the yellow and green lines.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And
No, well, that doesn't correlate all the way along.
no. No, because the 14 financial years where the gap was the biggest and that's the smallest.
Right, but
By
financial year
year.
20 is they're almost touch, and yet it's a positive.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the net cash flow for investing activities, but these lines only represent the capital expenditure and the capital income. It's taking out the loans and any sales and
Asset
proceeds.
sales, yeah, and loans aren't included in the line, but the blue does include it.
Yeah. Okay.
We just might have to
Delete the blue
clear
bars.
those.
Yeah.
But the main point is for the top graph, really that needs to be, should be aiming to keep that as high as possible. And I think if you look at these new sustainability ratios that they want to bring in, that will be one of them.
That would be what, sorry, Brett?
One of the ratios that they're looking to bring in. Anyway, we'll calculate them and present them to council, the new ratios, so that they have one called operating cash ratio.
Which is Mr. Mayor, similar to what we're doing for that sustainability.
Councillor Peggles, to go back to your point about a bit of a narrative, I mean, I guess I look at the narrative as the bottom line on page 174, where the year-to-date actual is a net result down at 2.4 and was expected to be 10 million up. So I interpret that, as the statement say, as a $12 million variance behind. So a bad story. You know, they're not, nothing I'm seeing here tells me a good story about our financial performance at all. However, some of it may be mitigated by things like, as is highlighted in both the graph and in that same financial statement, material services being double expected budget year to date, but may not actually be out for the full year. So we've spent 50% of our budget for materials and services in the first quarter. That's going to have an impact. Can't not, you know what I mean? Like, but it only becomes a problem if we're anticipating the annual budget going up, if we're not going to exceed our annual budget. And I guess that's where you're looking at some commentary around where there's key drivers around variances in the budget for that to be identified that, look, yes, we have spent 8.5 million, but we're not going to exceed our 16.4 that we're budgeted to exceed. There's been an early presentation of an invoice or a job's being bought into the first quarter. That's what you're looking for, is some
I just want a paragraph there saying
what those
basically,
variances are about.
yeah,
Mr. Mayor, going back to that statement of cash flow, it does include carried forward contract assets as well in it. So as a result, that what our actual cash position is differs because of that $8 million we've carried forward year 20.
From the flood damage.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and a few other capital projects.
Like the $2 million for the...
Before the next meeting, we'll reverse all those carried forward balances. And leave those so that
Because we're still in the process of, Mr. Mayor, doing the financials, so we haven't reversed anything because our figures are not confirmed yet. So it's about 8.23 million, which is at this stage carried forward from the last year in capital projects, including flood damage.
That won't impact the cash though.
cash balances.
The 14
Cash
million
is
is
cash.
Now, it won't impact the cash
but
balance.
it will affect the cash flow.
Just noting the sustainability, that blue, that top net operating cash, the department's saying anything above zero is good. What we're achieving, but for the unrestricted cash, for a very small council, they expect it to be 6 to 12 months of cash,
that's
which
it.
we've only got 2 months.
That's in that draft sustainability framework.
That's a project you've got to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another point that I think we need to contest too.
Oh, I do think we need to contest it, Councillor Peoples, but I do think that 2 months is not acceptable.
I agree.
But 12 as an outside parameter is unrealistic. Yeah, so I'm higher than 2, but I'm not as high as 12, definitely.
I'm the same.
4 to 6 months is probably more what I would think without having a look at the figures. 4 to 6 months in advance with no ability to raise revenues probably gives us the time taken to enact doomsday scenarios. Because that's effectively what it's for. If all revenue stopped, how long does it take you to unwind the business of council? Effectively what we need to know that figure for. You know, radically restructure, radically refocus priorities. The longer that period is, the longer you've got to enact that change. If it's 2 months, put it this way, if it's less than 2 months, which is what surprises me, the department says anything better than 0 is good, because like, if that happened to us,
That's cash flow.
oh, not for sustainability,
It's
it's
a month.
6 months.
So we're an essential service.
So we're told, yes.
So we keep operating no matter what.
Once the money runs out.
I'm just talking about if we do happen in the next 6 months with everything opening up, we get COVID, we keep operating.
Oh, unrelated, sorry, yeah. We have to provide
We
water,
have
waste and sewage. Yeah, we've been clearly defined as an essential service the whole way through. Local government is essential service. Councillor Plum, any questions on the finance? Councillor Arnold.
Through you, Mr Mayor, a very small question about 74. There's a $67,000 swap, I guess, between employee benefits and material services on the far right-hand side. In the full-year revised budget, is that just a journaling? It doesn't change the totals at the end, it just, we go from 12,529 to 12,596, and then below we go the opposite, 16,433 to 16,366. Is that just a journaling of a cost?
Well, that's a revised budget as opposed to the original, council, so.
Mr. Mayor, so I'm still in the process of fixing the budget figures in the system on PCS.
Okay.
These figures were flowing through last year, then have a slight error in them, which I'm still trying to work out to bring it to what we have in our actual budget. And that's, as a result, yeah, it seems a bit different, Mr. Mayor, so I'm just working on it. And I'll have to work with PCS to resolve this.
So when it's resolved, it will go back to the way the original budget is. There's just an error in picking up the revised budget figures differently. Okay, so could be some interesting comparisons when we have a look at the October month included in the November. Although, just looking at the calendar, there's not going to be a lot of time there, is there, for that? We're going to have October closed out in time for the agenda, given that we're meeting the second week in November. That's okay.
Rolls over the next day.
The only other thing, Mr Mayor, it might be an exercise for us to, as councillors, and whether it be with Samad or the acting CEO, to sit down and see what we actually want to see and how we would like it presented with the performance stuff, because there's a lot of financial information there that's over a few pages. I know we have had some work with the sustainability and stuff, but as Councillor Peebles has alluded to, there might be just some small things, like staff might be doing stuff that we don't necessarily need or want, or we might have a higher priority on some stuff that's put at the front of the report. Not to hide anything else at the back of the report, but if it's foremost and prominent, and that is the stuff that we are particularly interested in, whether it is our cash at bank or whether we have outstanding works to claim. Is that something that we want to know? Like if it's over $1 million or if it's $50,000, that can change our financial position quite quickly over a month.
Claims is a particular issue that lodging, I believe, like if we've got claims lodged with those two agencies, notwithstanding the fact that they may tinker around the edges of invoices, it's just as good as money in the bank. Like CMR and QRA are going to pay us. Like forget everybody else, they will pay. So if we know what value of work sitting with them to be paid, that to me that's as
Yeah, well, just probably to add more to that little brief I want is, it might say, look, it looks a bit ordinary this month that we might be down 5 million, but we're just letting you know that there's 2 claims coming in where we're going to claim 5.2. Just those sort of things, so as we don't have to try and tease them out by looking at this and trying to ask all these questions. It's written in for us.
I wouldn't want to see us get to where we just rely on a written narrative, though. I think it's important that these statements are presented, you know, a balance sheet, a statement of cash flow and a financial performance. I think those, because whilst the narrative would also miss something that we want to further investigate.
I'm not taking anything out. I'm just asking for that little bit of a brief, just tell us, a bit more information so as we don't have to try and tease it out.
But Mr. Mayor, it might be as simple as, yes, we've got $2.7 million that's actually gone to claim, but we've got an additional $1 million that we expect hasn't gone to claim, but it's been completed. And that may go some way to say, to support why we've spent money on materials and contracts, but that revenue just hasn't come in.
We can present whatever information you want, so I suppose we're giving you samples of information. If you like, you can tell us, yeah, we really like that, or we need, council people said we need a bit extra. Let us know so that we can make sure we amend the report for the next meeting, so that eventually you get reports that provide you with the information that you need.
Yep.
Councillor Hanson, questions on the financial statements? Councillor Gleeson,
I think
Councillor Rogers, I think that's hard to be sorry. All right, we will move to the 342, the project progress report. Councillor Peebles, leaving the room. Right, somebody move. Councillor Plum, Councillor Gleeson seconds. Those in favour? 6-0. Right, comments, questions? You can do that on your own.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Gleeson.
a couple of little items here, just wanted to clarify. It's the community-led signs, item 13860620.
Yep.
$25,000 more than budgeted.
Yeah, what was the explanation?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council approved that over budget amount previously.
Because there was a double up. Was it one you get two or something? There was a quote issue, but yeah, we formally resolved
I thought there was, I wasn't sure.
a long time ago now, though, that's what it
The solar installation, water pumps, the solar installation, there's $67,000 difference there. We spoke about that at
we approved that as well.
the same time.
So that was to allow for the full solar array for the new wall here, to go on solar. And we approved the over budget because it was a reallocation of solar from within that existing program anyway. Is that correct, Brett? Is there money left?
It was, that the TCP money was a whole amount of $50.
And we had on
We
solar
could
projects.
reallocate within that. There was a notional allocation.
But we did bring it back to council for a formal resolution because it was such a substantial change. What you've picked up on there is a good thing. We actually formally resolved to change the budget for that or approve the over budget. So instead of it flagging and presenting as over budget, it's not really. That's right. So where we formally do resolve that, we should change the budget cost column because it's not. Like then you don't need to rely on your memory to remember whether we've done it or not. It's on either an approved variation or we've actually formally, in most cases now, we've formally amended the budget for that item. So.
And again, with the explanation at the Courage on Drive, there's $95,000 difference there. I'm sure that we've discussed that, and if we have discussed it, it would look better if it wasn't 95,000 more than budgeted.
So for the next, Sarmad has, Mr Mayor, Sarmad has the journals to correct that. And so the next report should accurately reflect the cost of.
That's my answer. Councillor Rogers. Councillor Blunt. Councillor Arthur.
Through you, Mr Mayor, those projects that were carried forward, we still have that in the percentage like completed. Whereas, say, for example, the Barkey Red, it's got carried forward, but we're
X amount complete.
8% over budget. But are we 100% done in, or all but done in the physical project? I think our colour coding, like we brought up about the completed within budget, overspent, and then overspent by more than 10%. And the only one that really jumps out is the Barcaldine Town fence that we've applied that to.
That must mean it's the only one completed, is it? For this year.
Our LED notice boards not completed, or?
Look like they are to me. Just have to look at that. So can you just point me to Barkey Red, please? Sorry, Councillor, I missed it.
Economy, goal 3, the last
Yep.
entry. And then lower, there's multiple entries there that are carried forward where we haven't expended any, or some we have expended money, some we haven't.
Like the airport reseal.
Yeah, another one is Porter's Street.
Okay.
So what, sorry, I'm not sure what the question is.
So we've got, instead of the percent complete, we've got to carry it forward.
That's been sitting there since
July.
July.
Or June, really. Which is when we indicated that they weren't going to be completed, so they carried forward there. And the projects that are complete.
Get that changed.
Any questions, Councillor Hanson? Special operating costs, that spreadsheet, anyone, any questions there? Cool. Sure we approved that one as well. Marlborough?
Yes. That is under, that's actually under budget.
Yeah, we approved the budget at 60,000 because the first year budget was only 30 and then our new budget we increased it to 64.
That's right, 60. So it's 90,000 altogether.
Still money to come in there probably though, is it, as you finished? The budget.
About 80 something.
So there's still stuff to go in the spreadsheet that isn't here. Good neighbourhood program is finished. is there still a little bit to do there?
We haven't received the final payment yet.
No, Mr. Mayor.
It's finished. The
So
project's finished.
we're not going to be putting any more into the costs. It'll be a $28,000 underspend there.
Just have to check that and finalise with that expenditure.
Any further questions on operating, special operating? No? We'll bring Councillor Peoples back inside, please. 343, I'm going to move the Community Care Services report. Councillor Rogers, second Councillor Gleeson, those in favour? Carried. 6-0. Questions? Actually, hold your questions, mate, when the Councillor rejoins chamber. Still don't know where he is. Okay, questions, please? As always, this is the case early in the year. It looks like it's slightly over. These things seem to balance up because we get those prepayments in advance. When you get closer to the back end of the year, things get pretty close, don't they?
Yes.
Notes here of consistent with earlier months. Still hoping to receive positive advice around 60 and better. Haven't heard since the time of our last meeting.
Stifled me another question, Mr. Mayor.
It's on track. I've intended, if I haven't heard within days, I'm going to be scheduling a meeting when I'm in Brisbane for another event on the 1st of November, a meeting with the Minister. Okay, 351, the works report. Can I have somebody please move we receive Vlad's report? Councillor Peoples, you have joined the chamber late. Have you any questions for community care?
No, Mr. Mayor.
351, somebody move this please. Councillor Plum, Councillor Hanson, those in favour. 7-0. Questions? Vlad, have you anything to offer?
No, not really. The Aramac Road change to Crossings 4, they're still working on the subgrade, and Aramac sidetracks now has been sealed, and the culvert replacement continues on Capricorn Highway.
Back for Trench 2 funding on Aramac Road, which is CN 16944. Is that on track for completion before 31 December?
If it doesn't rain, should be right, but we're pushing it. We are really pushing. The guys are really working hard to get that done. We have already had discussions with TMR just in case there is a situation where we won't. And those discussions are ongoing as well. But we got in this year, which was a good thing. So right now we're looking on track, but there might be, if it does rain, there might be a situation where we have to talk to TMR and look at ways of trying to open the road without damaging the detour. So that's ongoing.
Okay. Sewage treatment plant upgrade, things look like they're finally starting to get rolling here. The clarifier.
Yep.
Is that still 24 to 28 weeks from this report or from the point of order?
That was from the previous report, my apology.
So we'd be back to 20 to 24 weeks.
Yeah, 20.
Is that going to be the slowest part of the construct?
Yes.
So everything else will be ready to go, awaiting the clarifier.
And the things that we can do, we will do, and we've already started doing that. But we're trying to work out so we can open it up and get it done as quickly as possible by utilising the things that we have and starting to put them in place. We have got a SOP top workshop on, I believe it's this Thursday. That's safe operating procedure for the actual plant. So that will be done as soon as that will be compiled in plant's operation. Ready to go.
Questions, councillors, for the flag? Thank you, Samed.
Please,
Appreciate that. Some detailed questioning there, and I am not blind to the fact that this first 3 or 4 months is a very challenging time with the financials, given the rollover, the fact there's things that you would do in small business you can't do in local government because you've got to wait for your auditor. A lot of people just get to the end of June, reconcile and change their new accounting year. We don't have the luxury of being able to do that. So a lot of this will become clearer as you're allowed that rollover. We appreciate that, but at least now you've got some feedback from us. And the increased reporting, we are happy with it. It's, as councillors Peoples and Arthur suggested, a matter of just refining that as we go. But there's nothing that I see in there that isn't valuable to us or to some of us in some way. So it's not a matter of anything you're doing being wrong. It's or yourself and the team. It's a matter of just continuing to refine. The financial statements continue to get presented in consistently easier to read formats, meeting by meeting. So it's a work in progress, and we're very grateful for your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just...
Questions, right? Yes.
Just on the road out here, can I say that every time I come through there, it looks like they have made pretty good advancements. I think they're getting a bit of work done in time, so...
Yeah. They are working hard, and I'm really thankful for that, because there's a good group there that are pushing themselves and putting 10 to 12 hour days in and on the weekends as well. It's really appreciated of them.
No, you can see it too, Glenn.
Yeah.
Councillor Gleeson.
Mr. Mayor, I've asked this question before, but I just want to ask it again. The flood damage jobs that are in progress now. You don't sign off on them, do you? It's a job supervisor or George Bond or the engineers that sign off on those jobs?
Yeah, GBA do theirs. They'll sign off on the works because they need to take photos prior and after and during and that type of stuff, and we do our own as well. There has been a lapse. Or, there's stuff that has gone missing, some photos that have gone missing from different areas. However, that was picked up in our last supervisors meeting, and that was reinforced that has to happen. And it's the supervisor's responsibility to make sure that that does happen. I couldn't stress that enough. We admitted that, and we made sure that that was heard correctly.
Further questions? 352, councillors with a PCLI, please leave.
I'm going to vote back against me.
Are you? Not much to go. Thank you, councillor. This will probably be our last resolution before lunch. Okay, presented is the tender submissions for wet and dry plant hire. This makes them pre-approved. Doesn't mean the only people that can get work, but what it does mean is that they can be used on a pre-qualification basis. Any questions for officers before we move? Do I have a mover? Plum? Rogers? Debate? Those in favour? 4-0. Resolution 361. We return. That is the first time ever. Ever. That resolution's gone through here today. Move to Councillor Peoples, second to Councillor Plum. We received Damien's report. Damien, anything to lead to here before I go to questions?
Yeah, no, Mr. Mayor.
As presented. Questions? 362. So Council Health. I believe we should close the meeting under that clause, please, Brett. Yeah, I've got 2 giving board and J, so 3. Day 3.
Excuse me.
This was the only one I thought we might close, and I should have done my homework. On the basis that of the commercial discussion that we could be about to undertake, as well as probably meeting is resumed. Do I have a mover? Councillors Gleeson move and Peoples seconds. Will there be debate? There being no debate, I'll put the resolution. Those in favour? 6-0. Meeting adjourned. 12:44.
For